This year I read so many incredible books, and I thought this was the perfect time to do a video where I talk about my favorite books of the year, books that just made such an impression on me, and yeah, talk about books that I will probably remember forever. So I think this is going to be a rather long video. If you love reading and if you want book recommendation, this is the book for you. This is the video for you. And yeah, and if not, this is just a cool review for me to see what I read this year and to remind myself of how incredible all these books were. I just realized that the book that I wanted to mention first is not even in this pile. So just a second. Okay, I'm back with the book. Right, so I think I want to start with the book that probably, made the biggest impression on me. I think I don't have only one that had this effect on me, but this book really had this impact on many others. This is not a book that came out this year. I believe it came out this year in my country, but for others it came out in 2022, so last year. And it's Tomorrow, Tomorrow and Tomorrow. This was one of the most incredible reads I ever had. Gabrielle Zevin is an absolute storytelling genius. Not only that, but I love this book so much because video games are so dear to me. I grew up with video games. I cannot imagine a life without video games myself. Seeing a book that just portrays video games beautifully and shows that video games is one of the most beautiful art forms. And yeah, I think it's not mentioned a lot, probably more than before, but it talks about game design, about retro games, about how it is to create a game. It has Shakespeare references, beautiful poems. I think it mentions Emily Dickinson. It is also, most importantly, a love story, a love triangle, and a crushing story that made me cry at 4 a.m. in the morning. So for all that and more, this is one of the most incredible books I ever read, and I 100% recommend this book to everyone, and mostly people who love video games. Gabrielle Zevin, thank you for this book. The second book that I will remember forever is obviously from my favorite writer. It's Haruki Murakami. It's Norwegian Wood. I read it really early this year, in January. That's why, for me, in my head, I read it years ago. I don't know why, but I mean, obviously, it's my favorite writer, so I love, honestly, I read a lot of Murakami books this year, but I love every single book he ever wrote. Norwegian Wood is a 5 out of 5 book. It's incredible, and you know what? I think what I love most about Murakami books is it is such a journey. I always remember his books for different things. That, for example, when I read, for example, Norwegian Wood, I download the musics that are referenced and I always listen to them. And every time I listen to, for example, Norwegian Wood, obviously, which is also the title, I think of this book and I think of the story. And it's obviously a very, very crushing story. It's the saddest Murakami story I think I've read until now, at least. Yeah, it's beautiful. If we're mentioning Murakami, I think I can also talk about I have a mess. Yeah, talk about the other books I read from Murakami. Danse, 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 so Dance, 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 is I think even better for me, slightly better than Norwegian Wood for me, but I love them both incredibly much. But this was such a unique story. I remember reading it and I was in this weird hotel called the Delphin Hotel. What a journey. And also, as I said, all the music, I listen to it every day. It's just part of reading Murakami, I think. And when it's your favorite author, it's just, Murakami is a genius. As I said in other videos, he's the best writer for me. Nobody beats Murakami for me. His writing style is unique, magical realism at its best, really. So okay, next book I read, which one should I mention? Oh, yeah, another Japanese read. Shocking. I pretty much only read the Japanese books, but Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Tsujimura was also one of the best book I read. I also read it in January, and it will stay with me forever, because this is one of the best story about being a weird child, being different growing up, and going to school or not going to school. This is a Japanese Harry Potter with a fairy tale and a tragic ending, and beautiful book. Really, I freaking love this book. Another Japanese author that is worth mentioning this year that I discovered is Miko Kawakami. Let me see where the other books are. I'm so sorry. My books are all over the place. Miko Kawakami. So I read these books from Miko Kawakami. Obviously, Heaven, I mentioned already in another video, has the most shocking ending, but it's the best book on bullying I ever read, and I think it's such an important read. I absolutely love her writing style. Miss Ice Cream Sandwich is a book from the perspective of a child being obsessed with this ice cream lady at a convenience store. I think this book is a really short read, but I was just so impressed by her writing style. And All the Lovers in the Night, another great book if you're lonely in your 20s. Absolutely incredible. Okay, so I just got through Miko Kawakami. Another one I loved was What You're Looking For in the Library by Michiko Aoyama. I read this in autumn, and I think I just love the atmosphere of this book. It's 5 or 6 short stories related to this one library. It's about different things, different topics, about midlife crisis, about someone not sure if they should pursue their career as an artist, someone who's already retired. It's a beautifully written book, typical Japanese style, and really I recommend it to everyone. I had such a blast reading this book. So then I read some classics this year as well. One of the classics I read I don't know where the books are. One of the classics I read was Great Expectations. I finally read Great Expectations, and I did not expect to love it this much. I absolutely loved it. So I listened to the audiobook at the same time as reading it, and I loved every single page. Honestly, I didn't expect to like Charles Dickens this much, but I think Pip's story it's such a cool journey, becoming a gentleman and being just so sweet and in love with this. And I'm going to beep this out, but this bitch of Estella, just fuck you. I hated Estella so much. Obviously Estella has had a really rough past, and I understand this, but I don't care. When a man loves you so much, he didn't deserve this. He just deserved Estella. All he did for her. I mean, I'm sorry if you don't know Great Expectations, but this story is so cool. Oh, man, I really love this book. I also read one from James Joyce, Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. It's James Joyce. I absolutely loved it as well. I think it has similarities to Great Expectations because it also followed the story of a little boy. It starts with him being really young. I loved the first part especially because it really shows this boy's perspective of going to school in Ireland, and during a time that was quite rough in Ireland because there was politically it was really a shifting time, and there were tensions because of the church and all that, and James Joyce just wrote it so well. I mean, it's James Joyce, and the prose is beautiful. It has songs and poems, and yeah, I loved it really. Sometimes you just have to read a good classic, right? And then there's How Do You Live by Genzaburo Yoshino, which is the most famous children's book in Japan. I read it because of the Ghibli movie that came out that was inspired by it, and yeah, it will also. It's also one of those books that will stay with me for a long time, because it's everyone can learn something from this, and it has incredible stories about Napoleon, about Copernicus, about it really is such a good book to make children understand how they should be nice, how to be a good human being. And really 100% recommend this book to everyone, and not just children. Oh, another book, The Vegetarian. I don't know if this is a Korean book, Hankang, correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, I'm a vegan and a vegetarian, so I thought, you know what, sounds like a good book. If you read this, don't expect it to be about veganism or about being a vegetarian, because yes it is, but it's the most disturbing story I read this year. It's not necessarily, it is a bit traumatizing, but I will not say what this is about. I think everyone who reads this should just be surprised by this. But I think, I love these kind of stories, so if you love weird stories that are really shocking, this was one of these books. So obviously when I started reading and then realized, wait, this is about something else. So I really recommend this. Also, I remember If Cats Disappeared from the World. It's funny because when I reviewed it, I said that it wasn't that impressive, but you know, looking back, I actually think about this book quite a lot, because I think it really made me think. This book is about a man who is about to die, but he can always live a day longer if he deletes something from the world for everyone. For example, movies, and then music, and phones. And I think this question is just so interesting. You can do so much with it. So this is something that still stayed with me a lot thanks to this book. So I definitely recommend this book, If Cats Disappeared from the World. Really, I had a great time. Oh, also, another Murakami, When the Bird Chronicles, and this one was the most traumatizing. The others were shocking and weird and all that, but this was the book that traumatized me the most in my life. When the Bird Chronicles is still one of my favorite ones because it's Murakami, but I had to stop reading it at one point. It was my summer book. I always choose a book that I read during summer. There is a part about 100 pages during World War II, and it talks about torture and how they tortured this group of people in ways that I will remember now for the rest of my life, and that will stay with me, unfortunately. I'm not shocked easily, but this gave me goosebumps and I had to put the book down for a while. There's another great book I read. Actually, this is one of the exceptions because I usually only read fiction. It's someone recommended me this book by an Indian author. It's called The Great Derangement, and it's about climate change. And I was just so happy to find a book that finally talks about climate change in also such an interesting way. There were so many great points in this book, and the first half is what I love most because it talks about literature and about how basically literature doesn't mention climate change, and he kind of explains why. Because the improbable just is something that isn't really common anymore in literature. For example, it still was during the time of Mary Shelley when she wrote Frankenstein, for example. And when realism came in literature, people just started writing about everyday life, about a very, kind of boring, realistic life without having shocking elements in books. Obviously, magical realism still has this, which is why I love reading Japanese literature, and especially Murakami. But I think this is a fascinating book. It also mentions Jane Austen, poets like Wordsworth, the Bronte sisters, I think, as well. The second part is more political and also about history. really, really the best book I read on climate change, and it made me think so much, and kind of makes me want to write a book on climate change, a fictional book. But yeah, 100% recommend this one. There's another one that is not non-fiction that I loved. It's one of the funniest book, somehow funny. I don't know, yeah, it made me laugh a lot. It's called Red Pill Person Who Does Nothing, and it's a famous person on Twitter called Shoji Morimoto, and he does nothing for a living. He invented this job of just accompanying people everywhere they want, and he doesn't really talk, he just, he's just there, and it's really, really, really unique and witty and fascinating. 100% recommend as well. And yeah, that was a great summer read. Yeah, I think this is pretty much everything. Wait, let me think. Oh, yeah. I also reread Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, because Vladimir Nabokov is one of my favorite writers next to Murakami. I think this is the best written novel of all time, regardless of the story. I do not like the story, and every time I have to justify myself that I do not approve of this story, okay? But I think Humbert Humbert is so perfectly written. It's almost, I just don't understand that. It's the third time I read Lolita, and I just want to know why Humbert Humbert is just so well written, How did he do it? Because it sometimes makes you almost understand why the protagonist does this, but sometimes you start to be repulsed again. It's just so balanced, I think. And also, linguistically speaking, this is way too good. The way he mixes French, Russian, German, all sorts of languages together in this book is too good, honestly. Lolita is good. I know it shouldn't be, but it is. And there's another book, which is why I reread Lolita, by the way, is because I found this book called Reading Lolita in Tehran. I don't know how to pronounce the city correctly, sorry. And it's about this woman in Iran who illegally had this book club with 6 other women, and they basically just gathered together on Thursday to discuss books that are not allowed in their country, in Iran. And they talk about Lolita, Pride and Prejudice, and I think, if I remember, The Great Gatsby as well. Wait, let me see. Gatsby, exactly. So it's really a beautiful book, and I enjoyed it so much. It was like being part of this book club, and also fun to discuss books that are just classics like Pride and Prejudice, obviously. Yeah. Okay, I need to be quicker because I don't know how long this is going to be. Maybe I'm not going to talk about all books, every single book. I read The Bell Jar. I do not wish to talk about it because it crushed me. It destroyed me. Every time I think about The Bell Jar, it just hits too close to home for me. It really... yeah. I always want to tear up when I think about The Bell Jar. It makes me cry because it's obviously something I can relate to 100%. I think a lot of women in their 20s can relate to The Bell Jar. It's so stupid because I always thought, The Bell Jar is maybe not that good. And I thought so until like the first half of the book, and then, yeah, this book is, I don't know if I will ever read this again because, yeah, it made me cry. Because I related so much, unfortunately. And also this edition has beautiful pictures. Incredible. It's a French artist called Béa Rebaï, sorry. And the pictures made it even worse in the best way. Wait, let me find it. Yeah, the figs from the fig tree. This scene will stay with me forever. Read The Bell Jar once and it's fine. Maybe don't read it again if you don't want to be depressed. But I would love to discuss The Bell Jar, honestly, in a uni course maybe. Next book is a book that someone at the library recommended to me, and she asked me, do you like shocking stories? And she said, I really love this one, and I said yes. And I hate to say it, but it was one of the best books I read this year. I love stories that are related to Lolita and are quite shocking, especially like age gaps. This is probably the best book I read about this. It's called My Dark Vanessa. It's basically the perspective of this student who, falls in love with her teacher in high school, but it always goes back and forth from her being 15 or 16 to her being in her 30s, and basically there are different victims who say that this teacher harassed them, but she never wants to believe them because for her it was always a love story. It is a love story between her and this teacher. It's quite an ambiguous story because sometimes I'm like, I don't want to enjoy this love story, obviously, and then sometimes I just scream and cringe and I'm disgusted, but it's like I love this combination. So it's not for everybody because it's really shocking, but I think this is one of the best books I read. And I'm really curious to know if others who read it had a different experience, but I was really sometimes repulsed, obviously, by the teacher as well. But I love how it's written. Really, I love it so much. I also read a German book that I finally read called Die Schlachtnovelle by Stefan Zweig. It's one of the most famous German novels. I read it in German, obviously, and I loved it so much that I annotated the book. This shows that, it's now probably one of my favorite German novels. I'm shocked that I didn't read it earlier. It's one of the best stories regarding Second World War, in my opinion. And for psychologically, for the psychoanalysis, I mean, Stefan Zweig was also very close to Freud and Thomas Mann, so it's just all fitting. It's this novel is genius, and obviously when you know what happened a bit later on to Stefan Zweig, it's even it makes it kind of worse, but also better. That's how I would describe it. Another book that is, I usually read only fiction, but I thought this was maybe necessary with the events that happened in Israel and Palestine. It's by Adanya Shibli. It's Minor Detail, and I think this is the best book I read, best fictional book I read, describing how it feels like to be a Palestinian since the 1950s. It starts in the 1950s with describing the Israeli army military and how they harassed and killed a Palestinian woman. And the second half is about in the modern world. It's about another Palestinian woman, and it's written in her perspective, trying to understand what happened to this woman. I think and she goes through this journey wanting to go to the Israeli part, and she wants to go to a museum there to understand the story more and history. And she goes through this journey and explains how tough it is to get to the other side. This is brilliant, really brilliant. I think no matter on what side you are, even if this book is obviously more, for Palestinian, I think it's still a good read to, see another perspective. And I think people tend to really quickly get into one group nowadays with social media. They either think they're on this side or this side. And I think it's important for people to, even if they don't agree and maybe hate this book, to at least try to read and inform themselves on what maybe the other perspective is. That's at least my opinion. I try to read both sides. I think there are always two sides, but I mean, this is not the theme of this video. Almond, quite similar to Heaven. I don't know why I always say this, but I love this more because it has a kind of a happy ending for this boy with this brain condition. I really love how absurd it is, but also beautiful. And I just realized I also have a last book I want to mention. It's Diary of a Void by Amy Yagi, which is a very witty and one of the funniest books I read this year, about a woman in Japan who fakes being pregnant, and it's really, really funny, and also talks about working in an office and about the Japanese work culture, and this is really, really good. Okay, I made it! You don't even know how exhausting that was, but also really cool to see that I read a lot. I read a lot more, but yeah, these books were so incredible. Oh, I can't believe I'm still talking about a book in my my conclusion, but Strange Weather in Tokyo is one of my favorite stories. It's about a teacher and a student, and they meet again years later after, well, she has a job and he's still a teacher or maybe retired, and they fall in love. And I think this is really unique, weird, typical Japanese literature, but really cute story. Yeah, I love magical realism, and yeah, another incredible read from Japan. Right, so I think I'm done, and let me just quickly rearrange my books for the thumbnail. I know this was a very chaotic video. I did not expect it to be this chaotic. To be honest with you, I could have had a better order regarding the books, but I got through the books, most of them, but honestly it's really hard because I love reading. It's really rare that I don't like a book, so you know, when I read the book I'm just, oh, that was another good read. But yeah, this book especially, and also this book and other books like this one, yeah, were such a bliss to read. It was pure bliss, and yeah, let's look forward to another incredible year with beautiful books. And I think I actually want to start writing again, and maybe start writing my first book next year, because yeah, I think I've read so many books and they made me want to write myself, and I think I'm ready.